most notable Irishman of recent decades. They didn't call himself Irish, British, and it was British too, definitely. And that is Lord David Trimble, who died, I think, just 2 days ago, but his death was only revealed yesterday. Now, he knew he was dying for some months. I don't know what he actually died of, but they said he faced it with the greatest of fortitude. But the stoicism with which he met his death typified the man. Anyway, so he was born in 1944 in Belfast into a Protestant family of a unionist outlook, and then his uncle Jack, as he said, was somewhat involved in unionist politics at quite a low level. So he grew up in sort of a lower middle class family, and I read a bit of that. What's his name? Dean Goddard, is that the guy's name? Biography of David Trimble, which came out in about 2000. So yeah, Trimble, the family didn't have much money. He was involved in the Royal Air Force as a teenager. He'd actually joined the RAF properly, whatever you call it, that sort of training thing, that youth training thing. And initially, he couldn't afford to go to university in the early 60s. He got some sort of a job, was in the civil service, and that enabled him to go to the Queen's University of Belfast, which was then the only university in Northern Ireland where he read law, and he got a congratulatory first. He spent 4 years at Queen's. I'm not sure why, because it's usually a 3-year degree. And then he qualified as a barrister, but he was non-practicing and he was an academic all his life, but focusing on the most desiccated areas of law, like property. So he was quite a bland character. Who said this about him? I remember Robert McCartney, MP, not the IRA murder victim, the MP, said that David Trimble was an archetypal nerd. So that was him. He was rather thin-faced in his youth, but I think he looked better when he put on a bit of weight. So he was a bit Victorian, as Ulster Unionist politicians tended to be. And he got married early in life. They divorced after a few years. They'd having had no children. Then he married Daphne, one of his former undergraduates. I don't know if his liaison with her began back then, but that sort of thing was accepted in those days. But he had 4 children with his second wife, 2 girls and 2 boys. Anyway, he was involved in the Ulster Vanguard Party in the 1970s, which is the Loyalist Party. Bill Craig was the leader, best known by his slogan, "Liquidate the enemy," the former Home Affairs Minister of Northern Ireland. But some Vanguard people say, okay, Northern Ireland, we're never going to join the Republic of Ireland. The United Kingdom doesn't want us, mistreats us, so we'll leave. They'll pay us to leave. But anyway, that didn't happen, so he's kind of a hard liner, although that's actually not unionism, it's against unionism. That's like Ulster separatism. But he became a conventional Ulster unionist in the 80s. And then the MP for it was Upper Ban died in 1990 of cancer or something. So David Trimble managed to be elected for his seat. And then in 1995, Lord Molyneux, well, as he later became, James Molyneux, he stepped down as leader of the Ulster Unionist Party. So despite being a relatively junior MP, David Trimble was elected leader of the party. He was also an Orangeman, involved in the Drumcree dispute in the mid-90s. Drumcree is just outside Portadown, County Armagh. And can the Orangemen walk along the Garvaghey Road or not? Some of you won't know what the Orange Order is. So it's founded in 1795. It's only Protestants can join, and it says that they promote loyalty to the British monarchy so long as it's Protestant, as in were the British royal family to convert to Catholicism or Buddhism or something, they wouldn't be. But the LC Union sorry, the Orange Order doesn't actually say it's for unionism as such, but in effect they are. Anyway, so some of these marches are contentious. A lot of the Catholic community dislike the Orange Order, accused of being anti-Catholic and so on. Anyway, so they got their marches to go ahead, and he joined forces with Ian Paisley. So he was elated that he got his march to go ahead. He sometimes made uncharitable remarks about the Republic of Ireland. So then there's the Good Friday Agreement, which is his main achievement. Signing that one, it was contentious. A large minority of unionists were against, perhaps 40% of unionists voted against. The Democratic Unionist Party, led then by the Reverend Ian Paisley, was stalwartly opposed. But anyway, he got that passed. Obviously, almost all nationalists voted for it, and a minority of unionists voted for it, and that was a clear majority. Something like 67% of people in Northern Ireland voted yes to the agreement. So he's lied to by Tony Blair a lot, hung out to dry. Well, not the first one nor the last one. The IRA was supposed to decommission its weapons, and it wasn't happening. It wasn't destroying its weapons or handing them in or anything. So he eventually lost his seat, but he used to get an awful lot of hate mail urging him to commit suicide and things like that. He was under 24-hour police protection, always been in danger of being murdered by Republican terrorists, but increasingly loyalist terrorists as well. But he got the Nobel Peace Prize in 1998, along with John Hume, who was a sort of co-architect of the Good Friday Agreement. It's officially called the Belfast Agreement, actually. And John Hume, who died about 2 years ago during coronavirus lockdowns, he didn't have the enormous funeral and send-off that he so richly merited. Um, so there was famously a rock concert for peace that Bono of U2 was playing at, and there was John Hume and David Trimble on the stage, and he held up both of them and things like that. And David Trimble's daughter Victoria attended it. She's only slightly younger than me. She later came out as a lesbian. She wanted to get married to a Scotswoman, so David Trimble attended that. Now, he's a man of very socially conservative views, was probably deeply uncomfortable with homosexuality, but came to accept it. And he famously gave a speech in the House of Lords a few years ago saying, well, I've acquiesced to this, so I can't go around saying I'm against it. That's that, or there you are. I think that. So anyway, that was him. He was out of the House of Commons, and he'd been the first minister of Northern Ireland when they set up that Northern Ireland Assembly and Executive in 1998. Power sharing with the SDLP, the Constitutional Nationalist Party, and Sinn Féin, which is formerly the party of the IRA, which revolted many Unionists. And the DUP, they denounced him in the most contumely terms. But only 9 years later, they were to do exactly what he did. So it was the peace of the brave, and he took a lot of heat for what he was doing. But he was a peacemaker, and Northern Ireland is far, far better off for his efforts. I know he didn't achieve all on his own. Got to speak up for the security forces. Got to speak up for the informers in terrorist organizations. Got to speak up for the SDLP, some church leaders of both denominations who did so much to forge the way for a peaceful settlement to the dispute. Anyway, so yeah, that's him. And then he was ennobled. He was a conservative peer. That Ulster Unionist Conservatives' new force. It really got nowhere. The 2010 election. They thought it might win a seat, but that didn't happen. It's largely a dead letter, and his party was eclipsed. Obviously, the DUP became the main unionist party in Northern Ireland, and the Ulster Unionist Party has never looked back, as I think it's got no MPs now. So that's him. He was a rather red-faced person with a very dull-voiced, very restrained, the last Victorian. Anyway, so yeah, I suppose he'll be missed. And I twice saw him in London, once on Remembrance Day, another time was at Carlton Gardens, and I said, hello, Lord Trimble. That was my only interaction with him. Pity I never properly met him, would have liked to interview him. So, yeah, a fascinating and transformative character. So we sorely missed. Anyway, please check out my website, George from Ireland. Please donate to me on Patreon and so on. There are podcasts you can listen to, the things behind a paywall. So, yeah, please make sure you donate. GeorgeCallahan79 at gmail.com. Toodaloo.